Welcome, my dear students of Class 8 to this English class with me, your tutor Atsinyo Sekose. Today we are going to continue with the lesson that is Bepin Choudhury's Lapse of Memory, Part 4. And I am sure finally we are able to conclude what happened to his memory. Now, if you can recall, what happened in our previous class is that he decided to go to Ranchi, and we are also kept in suspense whether he will be able to recover his memory or not. So let's find out. So he did book a ticket, and the moment he stepped out of the train, he got into a car and decided to go for sightseeing. Let's see whether the places that he saw helped him recover his mind or not. So he went about for a sightseeing, saw the streets, the city streets, buildings, the places. And remember, if you can recall, we have also talked about how Ranchi is very important in our story, and that it is a very beautiful place with a lot of tourist hotspot. And he went about seeing all those places that he might have visited in his previous trip. He went about visiting all those important places that tourists usually visit. And yet he's not able to recall anything. Every place that he went to looks new, brand new to him. And he did not have any acquaintance with any of this. He was not familiar with any of this place. At that point of time, he started to lose hope. What is happening to my memory? Have I really lost it? But he did not want to leave any stone unturned, and that's why he decided to go to Choudhury Falls. Now, if you remember Choudhury Falls, that was also something that is very important in our lesson. So he decided to go to that beautiful place. I'm sure he's thinking, if I go to that waterfall, I'm sure I will be able to recall. So he decided to go there. Now, do you think this Choudhury Falls will do the trick in helping him recover his memory? Let's find out. So at Choudhury Fall, he went there. But still, even this place did not look familiar at all. So he started to feel very worried. I'm sure I must have lost my mind completely. I'm sure I'm going crazy. Remember, he has only one brother who also died of insanity. Poor Bepin Babu. He went to all this trouble, took a trip, take the doctor's suggestion, and came all the way to Ranchi, went for a sightseeing, go to beautiful places, and yet he's not able to recollect his memory about his trip to Ranchi in the year 1958. So now he started to feel all lost. So now he lost all hope and he fainted. He lost consciousness. Now at that point of time, he was fortunate enough that two Gujarati gentlemen were there to help him. And when he regained his consciousness, the first thing he said is, I'm finished. There is no hope left. Poor Bepin Babu. Now what is going to happen to him? Is he going to end up like his brother and end up in a mental hospital? He came back home, and the first thing that he did was called up the doctor and told him to pay him a visit, and he took a shower, got himself into bed, and got himself an ice pack and started thinking about what is going to be his future. He must be very worried. What will happen if he lost his memory? He will not be able to perform his work normally. Remember, he will place his work above everything else. He's a very dedicated person, known to be very conscientious. But if he has no memories, then he would end up crazy. So all these thoughts were going on in his head when his servant entered again with a green envelope. Now, do you think this has something to do with Bepin Babu? And it has his name written with red ink. So that tells us that it must be an important letter. I'm sure at this point of time you are feeling sorry for Bepin Babu too. All this time he's not able to perform his work. He even took the trouble to go to Ranchi. It did not help him, but in fact he also met an accident. He fainted and now he's back home trying to recover his health. And I'm sure he's not able to take any more bad news. But what could this envelope be? Let's find out. So, in this envelope, we found that it was a letter from his old friend Chunilal. I'm sure you remember who is Chunilal. So what does it has to say to Bepin Babu? Let's read together. Dear Bepin, I had no idea that affluence would bring about the kind of change in you that it has done. Was it so difficult for you to help out an old friend down on his luck? I have no money, so my resources are limited. What I have is imagination, a part of which I used in retribution of your unfeeling behavior. Well, you will be all right again now. A novel I've written is being considered by a publisher. If he likes it enough, it'll see me through the next few months. Yours, Chunilal. Now, I'm sure you will find some clues there linking to Bepin Babu's lapse of memory. So remember, Chunilal was an old friend whom Bepin Babu refused to meet him, and so he had played a trick on Bepin Babu. He is down on his luck, he has no money, he kept turning up at Bepin Babu for help, for a job, but since he did not help him, even though he has no money, Chunilal said that I have imagination. So using that imagination, he has planned all these events and he succeeded in fooling Bepin Babu that it was him who had lost his mind. So I'm sure by now you are able to tell that he never went to Ranchi in the year 1958. His memory was very much intact. But this is a trick played by his old friend who found that Bepin Babu was very unfeeling, was not helpful at all. Even after he had done so much favors to him, Bepin Babu is a person who never cares much about friendship except his work and his books. So this is a trick that Chunilal planned for Bepin Babu, and Bepin Babu falls into the trap of that. So now I'm sure you find this very funny as well. Here we have finally revealed the suspense. At the same time, we found it humorous, the element of humor in the story. And what's more, because Chunilal has got his, even though he does not have money, because he has imagination, he was able to write a novel out of this event. That is, taking the example of Bepin Babu's lapse of memory, the so-called lapse of memory, he was able to write a novel and a publisher was considering to publish it. So that will give him some monetary, that is money, help. And with that, he is able to survive for the next few months. Now, what do you think is Bepin Babu's reaction when he found this letter? I want you to think about it, use your imagination, and try to recreate that scene. If you want to write it, you may. If you want to say it or share it with your friends, you may do so. Now, our story is not over yet. So, after he received this letter, remember he placed a call to Dr. Chanda. Dr. Chanda arrived, and Dr. Chanda must have arrived in a very hurried, emergency manner, thinking that Bepin Babu, who is his patient, something terrible might have happened or something wonderful might have happened. So he came, and this is what Bepin Babu has to say. I'm fine. It all came back to me as I got off the train at Ranchi. Do you think he's telling the truth here? That is very far from the truth. Why? Because he had never been to Ranchi, but now he is feeling embarrassed to say that he had fallen into the trap of an old friend. So he said that it all came back to me when I stepped off the train at Ranchi. A unique case. The doctor considered has taken it very seriously. Your case is a very unique case. I shall certainly write about it in my medical journal. And Dr. Chanda, thought that this is a very interesting case and that he shall make a point to record it in his medical journal. The reason why I sent for you is that I have a pain in the hip. Now, how did he got that pain in the hip? Now, it's not the pain in his head about loss of memory, but a pain in the hip. He got into an accident. Remember, he fainted at Choudhury Falls. So, for real, he had got injured. From a fall I had at Ranchi, if you could prescribe a painkiller, now he needs a painkiller and not to solve the problem of his loss of memory. So that is a humorous element in our story. Our story did not end up in a very tragic manner. Bepin Babu's memory was, like I said, was very much intact. Remember, he's known to be a very good worker, but his only problem is that he is not a good friend. He's not a friend who usually lends out a helping hand. And out of desperation, Chunilal had played such a trick on him. Do you think he has learned a lesson? I think you can also consider that question. Now, let's do some memory check again. Had Bepin Babu really lost his memory and forgotten all about a trip to Ranchi? He never did went to Ranchi, but he fell into a trap that was played out by or arranged by Chunilal. So he did not really lost his memory at all. Why do you think Chunilal did what he did? Now, what could be the reason for this? Remember, Chunilal has been turning up to his place for a very long time. He was in desperate situation. He has no money, and he thought that an old friend will be willing to help him out. And Bepin Babu is in a position to help him out, but he's a selfish person who never entertains in fact, who thinks that friendships are irrelevant, but finds work more important, and who never entertain in small talk. So I'm sure Chunilal, out of his desperate situation, had planned this. Chunilal said he has no money. What is it that he does have? He has no money, but what he does have is imagination. And using that imagination, he played out a trick on Bepin Babu, and not just a trick on Bepin Babu, but got a good story out of it, and has even published a novel and will be able to help himself. How do you think Bepin Babu reacted when he found out that Chunilal had tricked him? I'm sure you would take some time to consider this. And if you remember the interaction with the Dr. Janda, he said that it all came back to me once I stepped off the train. And that was not true at all, because nothing came to his mind when he went to Ranchi, because he had never been there in 1958. So now, I'm sure he felt embarrassed. At the same time, what do you think he feel about Chunilal, his old friend? Do you think he has learned his lesson? Do you think that, oh, I've fallen into the trap of a clever trap by a friend that is Chunilal? And do you think he's considering, I should have helped him? And with that, we have come to the end of our class. I am sure you will take some time to go through the other interesting exercises. So the whole story is, this story has really kept us on our toes, and because of the fact that it has this element of suspense, and that suspense starting from the first part of the lesson, what happened to his memory, we started questioning, and as the story gets unfolded, it gets more interesting. We got introduced to so many people who were his Bipin Babu's friends, and we've collected a lot of evidence that maybe Bipin Babu had really lost his mind. And all this time, we were also thinking that Bipin Babu really lost his mind and having this full hope that he will be able to recover it once he get to Choudhury Falls or at Ranchi. But that did not happen at all. And what we found is that memory loss can be a terrible thing that can happen to anyone because you will find that sometimes some people also suffered from it. But in our story, the good news is that it did not really happen. But what came out of the story is that Chunilal had got a good book out of it, and Bipin Babu must have learned a good lesson out of it. And with that, we have come to the end of our class. Thank you all very much for joining me.